Any good vibes we thought the Cardinals might get from calling up Jordan Walker, well, they didn't last long. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you. It is the evening hours of Monday, August 12th, 2024, and Game 1 in Cincinnati did not go very well for the Cardinals. Oh, my goodness. 6-1, the Reds take the win over the Cardinals as Sonny Gray, although he struck out the world the first time through the order, he also gave up several home runs. 5 innings for Sonny, 6 earned runs on 3 homers, 2 of which came by Spencer Steer, the leadoff batter for Cincy, who had obviously a big day. 2 for 3, 2 bombs, 5 RBIs, and also reached base via walk. Elly De La Cruz took Sonny Gray deep as well in this game. 3 total homers allowed by the Cardinal ace, who, has not consistently been an ace recently. Came off of a couple outings in a row before today in which he had pitched pretty well, 7 innings, 2 runs. And his stuff was obviously really good on Monday. To strike out 9 batters, you got to have good stuff. But he also had some moments where his stuff was not as effective, and Spencer Steer had his number. And in particular, the second homer by Steer, which was the third total given up by Gray. I thought that one was a pretty rough location for a 92-mile-per-hour pitch. The first homer that Steer hit, honestly, and Sonny said this after the game, we'll hear from Sonny Gray with some comments courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. He said in the inning where he gave up the back-to-back to Steer and Elly, he had really executed the pitches relatively well compared to what he was hoping to do to those guys. He pounded Steer in. It was a strike, but it was on the inner part of the plate, 93, and Steer just turned on it and launched the first one, which put the Reds on the board in the third inning. And then the very next pitch was 94 up and in to Elly De La Cruz. He turned on it. And you've got a righty doing it and then a lefty doing it. So I didn't have a major issue with those 2 pitches by Sonny Gray. In particular, the Elly pitch was, it was located up and in, and De La Cruz is just a freak athlete. I'm watching the Steer pitch again, too. It was, let me know if you guys disagree with this. And again, I understand people are going to be frustrated tonight with Sonny Gray because he didn't get the job done. 6 runs allowed is not, that ain't it when you're supposed to be the team's ace. Steer hit it into the second row. It looked like maybe third row. We know how Great American Small Park can be. We know the drill by now. But that pitch to Elly, guys, come on. If you haven't seen it and you're just wanting to be mad, that's one thing. Go back, pause it right now. Pause the podcast. Go find it. I'm sure if you Twitter search Elly De La Cruz, you'll find it because he's obviously a darling of social media. And he is an exciting player. Don't get me wrong. I think at times he's overhyped on certain things. But the game that he had on Monday night, had the home run, had a just kind of bonkers across his body throw to make an out on Mason win. These are the types of things that Elly De La Cruz can do. Yes, he strikes out a bunch, but I think if you're a Cardinals fan and you just don't like the hype that Elly De La Cruz gets, so in your mind you're like, this guy's not really that good. I'm sorry to say, he is that good. 845 OPS. He's got 21 homers and 59 stolen bases. Didn't steal one today, but I imagine before the series is through, he'll probably get to number 60. That's been a huge problem as well for the Cardinals. Their inability to throw out base runners has been a season-long story. I think it's gotten worse recently. And I've seen tweets, people talking about the comparison between Pages and Herrera. Not all that different. In fairness, it's not been all that different when you look at how many stolen bases have been allowed by Herrera versus Pages in a pretty similar amount of time. I think Kareem had the tweet. 43 allowed by Ivan Herrera, 39 by Pages, and the innings are virtually identical. So fair is fair, man. I was hard on Herrera earlier this season in terms of his defense and managing the running game. I do think it's a problem. To my eye, a lot of the throws we've seen from Pages have been more competitive than the ones I can recall Herrera making. But that being said, they're not really getting anybody out in either case. I am still going to maintain that the Cardinal pitching staff has got to do a better job. But when it's the Cincinnati Reds and this is just the way they do things, Jake Fraley had a day running the bases on the Cardinal pitching staff and the catching core. believe he had 2 stolen bases. He's got 16 now for the season. Spencer Steer had one himself. He's up to 19. Spencer Steer's closing in on a 2020 season. And I think this was only his second game as the leadoff batter for Cincy on the season, and homered twice. So maybe that is something that they could look to continue to get the offense going early. He was great today. And the rest of the Cincy lineup didn't. That's what's so crazy about the way we evaluate Sonny Gray's game. And we'll hear the way that Sonny evaluated it here in just a bit. But the Cardinals only gave up 6 hits today. 3 walks, 6 hits, and the Reds hit 3 homers, so they took advantage of their opportunities, obviously. Leahy and Armstrong came in, were scoreless for 3 innings, and he only had 8 since the Reds didn't have to bat in the bottom of the 9th. 5 innings, 6 runs allowed by Gray, 5 hits, couple of walks, but 3 of them home runs. And that's just the way it is. So you can isolate down Sonny Gray's outing into just maybe a handful of pitches that went wrong. And when I look at the 2 home runs of the 3, I don't even think they were bad pitches. Nobody's going to want to hear this. I'm going to get ripped in the comments, and that's fine. YouTube.com/@b-schaefer12. Find the YouTube comment section there. By the way, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy Cardinals content. Even if you may disagree with the guy delivering the content, it is still daily talking about the Cardinals. Hit that subscribe button. We are just over 4,000 subs here on YouTube. And if you want to follow in an audio platform like Spotify, just search B-Schaeff Daily and give us a follow and a 5-star review in those locations. Cardinals did not out-hit the Reds, despite the fact that the Reds only tallied 6 hits. Cardinals had just 5. And you were hoping coming into this game that the Jordan Walker bump would maybe provide the lineup with a boost. He did walk in his first plate appearance, helped to load the bases, and then a double play. So the bases were stranded, loaded, and then Cardinals were at least able to capitalize on their opportunities the next inning in the third with a Nolan Arenado RBI base hit. The Cardinals proceeded to load the bases again and to again not get anything out of that situation. It was a Brendan Donovan strikeout in the top of the third to end the threat. Again, they did get the base knocked by Nolan. That was the lone run that scored for the Cardinals on the game. Moved Wilson Contreras through to home plate. Tommy Pham advancing on the hit. Goldie was able to wrap a single out infield hit after that, but Donovan strikes out with the sacks jammed. And Oli Marmol mentioned runners in scoring position. They're going to have to be able to produce better with them in those situations moving forward. It's a little bit crazy that they did go 2 for 5 in the game with Risp. You had the RBI hit by Nolan and then Goldie's infield hit. But the 2 opportunities with the bases loaded to go double play and then strike out swinging kind of ends up being the game as far as the offense goes. Cardinals shut out in innings 4 through 9. It is a tale as old as time at this point, and it's not going to get them into the playoffs. It's just not. They have to be better offensively. And I think nitpicking to the point of, and look, if you feel that Herrera's bat should be in there instead of Pages, fine. Pages was 1 for 3 today. I think Pages does a fine job behind the plate. I think you're missing the forest for the trees a little bit if that's the fixation. But rearrange those deck chairs however you want. If the people sitting in the chairs aren't hitting and doing it in the clutch, this team's not going anywhere. I think the Sonny Gray outing looks worse in the box score, in the line score, than the outing itself really was. But he still gave up 6 runs. Like I said, I can tell you that the first pitch to Steer and the homer pitch to De La Cruz weren't bad pitches. The next one was a bad pitch. 3-run homer in the 5th inning was just a bad pitch. 92, middle away. Steer got his arms extended to it, was able to drive it for power. That was not a well-located pitch. And it was a costly one because it resulted in 3 runs. And just like the 3rd inning, when the Reds had the 3-run shot in the 5th inning, what contributed to the innings getting bigger on Sonny Gray than they needed to be were walks. A walk to Will Benson in the bottom of the 5th, preceding the home run by Steer. And prior to Steer's first home run in the 3rd inning, Jake Fraley drew a walk. He ended up stealing second base. But that is the adage, walks kill you. And they will come around to kill you. And it may not always be, it might not always be your fault. The home run pitch is not always going to be the worst pitch you threw that day. In the case of the second Steer homer in the fifth inning, I think it was. But the pitches to Steer the first time and to Ellie the first time, I didn't think they were terrible pitches. But that's baseball. Sometimes your opponent's going to put a good swing on a pitch. Sonny's got to have for him to be able to succeed, he's got to have the mind frame that he can pitch inside, that he can pitch aggressively in the strike zone, that his stuff is good enough to do it. But when you're looking to aggressively get ahead in counts and make sure you're burying strikes, that's going to happen from time to time. Guys are going to know those tendencies, and I think that was something the Reds were able to at least pick up on in the third inning when you look at those two pitches that were inside to a righty, inside to a lefty. Challenge pitches, but they seemed ready for them. I'm not saying in a sense of tipping or anything like that, but just, scouting report. I think Sonny Gray has been open throughout the year about wanting to get ahead in counts, and it's not like that's unique to Sonny Gray, but they're looking for a first pitch strike because they know that his tendency and his desire is to get ahead. And so there may be an aspect of that first pitch could be the best one you see. And if you start him off with a fastball, oftentimes pitchers do, and they're ready to turn on a pitch. Sonny doesn't throw crazy velocity. He's not 95 plus. He's 92, 93, 94. Were all the fastball home run pitches that were hit out today. So it is just what it is. And it's a bummer to have this result for Gray coming off of an outing where he went 7-2. But I think if you just looked at the line score, you're going to be more upset with Sonny Gray than if you watched the game. His stuff was electric first time through the order. And ultimately, Reds did a nice job of jumping on him when the lineup turned over. And then the fifth inning, he made a bad pitch, I think was probably his worst pitch. But walks in both cases contributed. And Sonny wants to be a guy that never gives up walks. Every pitcher wants to be guys that don't give up walks, but Sonny gets particularly agitated with himself when it happens. And you see why today, that the two walks that ended up giving up there, in this game, maybe he goes 5 innings, 4 runs, and you're within striking distance without the walks. Maybe the home runs don't happen because it extended the inning to another batter, that sort of thing. Third inning was all that came with 2 outs in the third inning. So let me know your thoughts, Cardinals fans, on how you feel things went for Sonny Gray. Obviously, there's going to be disappointment. To me, if I'm couching it between blame game for this game, whether it's Sonny Gray or Cardinal offense, I'm leaning toward the Cardinal offense. And I'm going to credit the Cincinnati offense, at least Spencer Steer and Ellie De La Cruz, for putting good swings on him in the third. But that's kind of my thought is you had 5 hits against a lefty, Andrew Abbott. You brought in Jordan Walker to be a guy you could plug in against lefties. Oli Marmol put out a very right-handed heavy lineup. Wynn Contreras, Pham, Arenado, Goldschmidt, your top 5 were righties. Donovan, the lefty in the 6 hole, and then you go Walker Pajes, one more lefty with Victor Scott. Somebody's got to play center. It's always going to be a lefty unless you put Tommy Pham in center. And I don't think they had a righty off the bench at all. With the current makeup of the roster, that's just the way that it plays out. Bench was Gorman, Nootbaar, Burles, and Crawford. All the lefties on the bench. So they put their best foot forward. Oli Marmol put out the lineup that conceivably should get the job done. Something that should be noted, though, in the way that Walker is being discussed as a platoon guy that's going to play against lefties. I've seen that characterization. I even said, look, I think he's going to play against lefties. So it's not like we were coming out of left field with that one. But when you look over the course of his career, and I believe this has been matched so far this season in Memphis, the splits have not really been favorable to him against lefties. This season in St. Louis is very small sample, but he's 1 for 19 against lefties with St. Louis, which is obviously not great. Was hitting 190 against righties with the Cardinals this season. But then if you go back to last year, pretty good major league sample size. 108 at bats against lefties. And again, the splits kind of matched that. Only a 231 average versus left with a 683 on, not an on base, but an OPS last year. 683 versus lefties. 823 OPS versus righties with a 292. So he might be a guy, and I still think that might be small sample early to suggest, but I think it could be pertinent and relevant to the way lefties try to pitch him versus what righties are able to do, right? I feel like lefties are maybe able to come in and get him to swing over the top that pitch that bites kind of at your back foot, and Walker has a tendency to chase that, whereas maybe he reads, for whatever reason, the breaking ball's low and away or pitches away, the right-handed slider or sweeper. Maybe, I don't know. We're just kind of guessing at this without a lot of pre-thought put into it, because I saw circulating today, and everybody gave Katie Wu a hard time for saying he would play against lefties. It's what he's going to do. I mean, we saw it today, and we'll see against righties what that ends up looking like. But it is fair to acknowledge that to this point in his career, both at the big league level and this year in the minors, he has actually kind of had reverse splits of what you would expect. So whether that's something the Cardinals believe they have an explanation for and are going to, continue to play him in those circumstances anyway, versus if it's, something that they maybe are trying to disprove and say, whatever the splits have been, we believe as a right-handed batter, Walker should be able to hit lefties, like we're going to see. But that's not exactly the storyline you want, given that the Cardinals really could use a better performance against lefties top to bottom as a lineup. Goldie today, 2 for 4. Arenado had the 1 RBI hit. Contreras and Pages were the only other hits for the Cardinals. 2 walks, just 7 base runners against Andrew Abbott, who more than did his job. 6 2/3, gave up just the 1 run, 6 Ks. Scattered those 7 base runners, just the 1 run allowed. And I mean, if you load the bases in consecutive innings and you come away with 1 total run, I believe it was with 2 outs the second time, with only 1 out the first time, that's just not going to cut it. Combine that with a third inning where Sonny gets ambushed by 2 hitters that were on his inside fastballs, and then sprinkle in just a mistake pitch in the 5th, preceded by a walk, you're going to have a bad recipe for Cardinal baseball. 6-1, the Reds get the win. The Reds, by the way, 2 games back of the Cardinals now in the standings. If the Reds sweep this series, the Cardinals and Reds will both be 60-61. Cardinals are teetering toward 500. I'm not being the spiteful guy to say that this Cardinals team is on the brink of being able to kiss the notion of the postseason goodbye. I still am stubborn. People will not like it because people want me to be the pessimist. I'm stubborn to believe that the Cardinals are going to figure it out, but there is so much reason to believe that they won't, that I'm not going to, it's not that I'm arguing with anybody who's out on this team. If you're like, nope, I've seen enough, cool, man. I'm not going to be able to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just sitting here thinking there's too much talent for them to continue to play this way, but maybe not. Maybe there isn't. Like, I have to be open to the possibility that I'm wrong at this point. We've got to, I mean, by the time this season's over, if it goes 79-83, we'll have 2 seasons of data to say that, there needs to be significant overhaul, because the overhaul this past offseason was supposed to be the rotation. You brought in Sonny Gray. You paid him a lot of money to be here. He's had an okay season, but his ERA is now up to 3.93. And again, I think he's going to be the whipping boy for this loss, more so than he should be. You're not going to go out there and credit him and say he pitched great, but the offense is the most disappointing part of this to me when you isolate it down and you look at the way that Gray pitched. And that's, again, we've done this with Dakota Hudson. We've done this with other Cardinal starters over the years where it's, I was just 1 pitch away for, you change this pitch. And you can't do that, right? It's baseball. It's competition. It's sport at the highest level. You can't change the outcome just because it was an unfair outcome. I think Sonny Gray, though, did have a couple of unfair outcomes, but at the same time, you lose the benefit of the doubt a little bit when you give up the 2 home runs and then later on you just, you make a big mistake pitch to the very guy that has already demonstrated the ability to hit your good pitch, right? You just can't afford to put that 92 middle away like you did to Steer the second time. That's where I would harp on Sonny Gray a little bit more, and then gave up the double to De La Cruz, which was really, for most people, a single, a blooped single in a right center. But because De La Cruz is extremely fast, he took second and it ends up going as a double against Sonny Gray. By the time that happened, by the way, Oli Marmol had been ejected from the proceedings. Was not a fan of a curveball that Sonny threw low and away. Looked on the TV broadcast as though he had dotted up Spencer Steer. And this was in the at-bat where he homered, so you have to wonder a little bit if that ends up, coming back to bite him. Pages actually slammed the mitt when he didn't get the call on 2-0. And Oli had enough. Got thrown out from the dugout, ran out, make sure to say his piece. He was not pleased. You could say, I think he held up 6 fingers to basically maybe demonstrate the number of calls he believed had been missed. He got his word in, right? He's got to say his piece, as they say. But Oli was not pleased, and I don't know if he had made it all the way back to the office there in the clubhouse, the visiting clubhouse there in Cincy, before Steer did what he did. But on the 3-1 pitch, I mean, just straight as an arrow, 4-seam, middle away, 92. 3-1 count. I think that's demonstrative of why you like to get ahead if you're Sonny Gray, because when you're behind and you feel like you don't want to put another guy on for free, you want to challenge him a little bit. Don't want to load the bases in that spot. Doing so probably gets you taken out of the game, maybe. Although your manager just got runs, so that you probably have a little bit more breathing room to be able to figure things out while they warm somebody up in the bullpen. And, he gives up the bomb. Ellie with the double thereafter, and that was really all she wrote for the Cardinals in this one. So let's go ahead and play some audio, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. We want to hear from Sonny Gray and how he responded and what he felt happened in this outing, and maybe what he's going to be looking to try and do a little better moving forward.
He's got to find a way to keep the ball in the park. I don't know what that is yet. But if you look at it, I feel like the games, it's just I have given up the 3-run homer a lot more than I'm used to doing. So I just gotta find a way to keep the ball in the ballpark. Everything else is fine. It's just I'm just giving up the big homer. Feels like on a semi-consistent basis.
What do you get from the home runs on back-to-back pitches, though? Like, what do you?
Those are fine. I mean, to be honest with you, that was exactly what I was trying to do on both of those pitches. Just wanting to get the ball to Ellie's hands. He swung at a fastball and got it, and then the same thing with Steer. We went cutter away, and then we were, taking him that way, and I got it to the top, kind of where I was wanting to throw it. Yeah, I don't know if it's something else that I need to look at, but I was fine. To be honest with you, I was fine with both of those pitches. And then the fifth was more of just a challenge type situation, I guess. And maybe wrong pitch to kind of double up there, but it is what it is.
So for you, is it like you were talking about, like trying to limit the home runs? Is it the home run itself, or is it limiting the runners on base ahead of the home run?
I think it's the home runs itself.
Okay.
Sonny, how good did your sweeper feel early on? You were getting a bunch of punch outs with that.
Felt great. Felt great. Yeah.
Do you think it's a location thing as far as like the second Steer home run was, I guess, center cut? Is that a ball that needs to be a different spot, or is it pitch sequence? Or
I don't know. I mean, that started off with an automatic ball, and then a curveball ball. So I don't know.
And then you had the long delay in there too. The curveball ball, the one that I think that's the one that Pedro kind of slapped on. How close do you think that pitch was?
I haven't seen it. I mean, it was. I liked it, but I don't know.
So is it harder pitching in this park where, routine balls are kind of home runs? I mean, it's a smaller ballpark, the ball flies out of here. Do you have to change your thinking when you pitch here specifically?
I don't think so, because I don't think it's just been here. I think it's been something that's been happening to me a little bit more. So no, I wasn't thinking about that.
When Steer homers off you the first time, does it change your approach much the second time you face him, or is it kind of what his strengths are and you're trying to attack him the same way?
Yeah, I don't know. I think he just got behind in the count there.
You guys have the Dodgers, Padres, Brewers, 6 games coming up. How key is this stretch to get through it? I mean, you're facing all really good first or second place teams.
Yeah, I guess we'll see in 2 weeks.
Not a lot there from Sonny Gray, understandably so, after the way the game went. But, yeah, he said some of the things that you'd expect to hear, and I don't necessarily disagree with parts of it. I don't really disagree with the notion of, executing the pitches he was trying to make to Steer and De La Cruz the first time. But at the same time, got to be aware of what guys are trying to do to you as well. And then admitted that he just got behind in the count to steer the second time and tried to get away with one. Probably, didn't execute it the way he wanted to. But when you're 3-1, trying to find a way, and he ended up paying for it for sure. The pitch that got Oli Marmol ejected when he began to argue it 2-0 to steer was asked if he felt like it was a strike, and you could kind of tell he wanted maybe to get into it a little bit, but knew better. Just didn't want to have that fight. Wouldn't be a good look to then say, yeah, it's the umpire's fault when ultimately he did give up 3 home runs. But I did think that pitch was probably close enough to be a strike. The way Pa has framed it was, I honestly don't know anymore how to talk about pitch framing from a catcher perspective and whether it's good or bad, because to me, there was nothing, it's not subtle. He took a pitch that was legitimately close to being on the black and then ripped it into the middle of the strike zone instead of like framing it low and away where it was pitched. But that's kind of what they teach you to do now because umpires tend to fall for it. So there's no subtlety to the art of framing anymore. So is the demonstrative rip of the glove and put it back in the middle and try to trick the ump, is that I'm not even trying to be facetious or be harsh on Pages for the frame job. I think that's just what catchers are told to do now because umpires are that dumb. I think that was the goal of the frame job, but to me, it almost takes away from the subtlety of it was on the black. He painted, and when you move it into the middle of the zone, it's like, well, I know it wasn't there. They can almost kind of confuse the umpire in the opposite direction. I don't know if that's what happened, if it was just a missed call, whatever the case, but Oli Marmol was not happy with the strike zone. He ends up getting run because of that pitch and then ended up having to go out there and say his piece the rest of the way. But we can also hear, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest, the thoughts from Oli Marmol in the game. And you'll hear this. There are a couple of questions that he was asked where he basically gave kind of the similar to Sonny, just maybe 1 or 2 word answers. Clearly not happy after the game. His team didn't really show up tonight the way that it needed to, but we'll hear from the skipper, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest.
7, first time through, and it was electric. The ball's coming out of his hand extremely well. He was executing pitches, was doing what he wanted, and it looked good. Steer, after the walk, took a really good swing on him, and the ball got out to left. And then the ground ball through the 4-hole, the walk, and then another steer homer. When you look at what else he did, Sonny looked pretty good, but a couple good swings by Steer and De La Cruz, and you got 6 runs.
Sonny last year gave up 8 homers all season. Obviously, a little different this year. Do you see any difference in what he's doing?
No.
Ollie, how tough was it to only get 1 run? You load the bases in the second and third. How tough?
Yeah, that's the difference, and it changes the overall vibe and momentum. When you put yourself in a situation to score there, you load the bases with 1 out. During this stretch, we're gonna play some good teams, and we're gonna have to do a better job of executing with runners in scoring position. It's just gonna be the key to our success moving forward. So we put ourselves in a situation where we could have changed the game a couple times and weren't able to.
You guys have hit Abbott before. Was he doing anything?
Yeah, we've gotten to him. He's actually thrown the ball well against other teams. We put some good at-bats against him. Did well today as far as getting guys on, just didn't get the big hit. That was the difference. Yeah.
Walker was 0-2 and worked a walk in his first at bat. He hit a line drive to center field. You seeing little strides from him?
Yeah, he took a couple good swings. Just over the top, but still a hard ground ball to short, and then that one to center. Was able to lay off some tough pitches there for the walk as well to load it up for Petey. Our hope is that, especially against left-handed hitters, that pitchers, he can put together some really good at-bats for us. Yeah.
And that's Oli Marmol, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. Again, they seem to believe that he's going to be competitive against left-handed pitching, and that's conventional wisdom. I just want to reiterate that for whatever reason at this point, and I'm sure the Cardinals have thoughts on this that, weren't specifically brought up post-game, but I'm sure if in other settings Oli would be asked about it, he would explain why they feel, maybe despite the splits, that Walker could be a particularly good weapon against lefties. But that's kind of the implication there. Kind of what the Cardinals seem to be looking for is him to add in that regard. But obviously not a whole lot from him tonight. 0 for 3, did draw the walk. I kind of pushed back a little bit on the notion that the Cardinals set the table well. They did it in the second and third innings against Abbott. After that, things kind of fell by the wayside. the majority of the Cardinals base runners do come early in this game, and that's kind of been a trend. They've either had games where they get at the starter early, they take good ABs the first time through, and then they maybe fade out a little bit after the first, time or two through the order, and then it's just nothing the rest of the game. Or sometimes it'll take them a little bit to get started. A starting pitcher might cruise through 5 innings or 6, and then they might be able to have an inning or two where they get to the bullpen. But rarely has it been both this season. And maybe rarely is not the fair characterization, but it hasn't been often enough, right? That they've been able to have consistent 1 through 9 efforts in innings 1 through 9 to be able to put together multiple scoring opportunities and then cash in on a number of them. Has just not been happening enough recently for the Cardinals. And look, I continue to say the phrase because you can ask questions and Oli Marmol can say, hey, we like this about our game, we like that about our game. And in his role, I understand why he would. But at the end of the day, a team is going to be what their record indicates that they are. And right now the Cardinals are middling. They're a 500 team. They're a game above 500. They are within striking distance enough to be able to turn that into playoff caliber. And like I said, I'm still of the belief that they are more than capable of finding a way to do that in a National League that's, nobody's really running away with it right now. For as much as we've talked about it being a deep group of teams that's trying to vie for these opportunities, it's kind of balanced out a little bit. Like the teams that are in chase mode are all losing. Mets have lost 3 straight. Cardinals have lost a couple in a row. The Giants have lost 2 in a row. The Cubs are actually not out of it, 4 games out. The Reds, as we mentioned, a couple more wins over the Cardinals, and they'll be tied with St. Louis. Reds are 4.5 out, Cubs 4 out, Giants 2.5 out. So teams that we thought had no business in this conversation, and maybe still don't, are kind of in it now because of the losses that have happened from the Braves on down. The Braves did win their game on Monday, so because of that, Cardinals are now 2.5 back. Instead of just 1.5 back. Was a 1-0 win in 10 innings for Atlanta. And Atlanta maintains their spot right now. The Mets had overtaken them for a brief moment, but now the Mets are struggling, and by the virtue of that, they are a game back, having lost their last 3 games. And I believe the Mets were idle on Monday, so they're a game back right now of Atlanta. Cardinals are still within striking distance. 2.5 games. There's plenty of season left to make up 2.5 games against teams that have shown the proclivity to lose a lot of games in a row or in a short period of time. Braves are 3 of their last 10, Mets 4 of their last 10. That being said, Padres and Diamondbacks have sort of separated themselves now. They're both 4 games clear of the Braves, which puts them 6.5 clear of the Cardinals. So it may just be that one spot. I mean, Arizona and San Diego both winning 8 of their last 10 has changed the dynamic really quick. And we've talked about coming into this stretch that could happen. Trade deadline goes by, and then teams are going to go on runs or they're going to fade out. The Cardinals have sort of still been middling, but they're on the wrong end of middling right now with 4 wins in their last 10. That run differential still ain't a pretty sight, minus 53. Rockies, Marlins, Nationals, the only NL teams with worse run differentials. The American League has a decent handful of teams in that situation. White Sox, Athletics, Angels, Blue Jays, as well as the Rays are worse than the Cardinals in run differential as of right now. But yeah, that's going to put you bottom 10 in the league in the category. So, I mean, I think it's a worse run differential than it was at this point last year as well. I think Brandon Kiley might have had that tweet tonight. So, yeah, folks, I understand if there is pessimism in the room right now. It's going to be as simple as the Cardinals have to improve. In the areas that they've been struggling, they've got to play better. They've got to hit better with runners in scoring position. They've got to not, and again, their manager's always going to want to give the bright side and defend his players, and that's all well and good. But we're also going to be, I think, realistic about the fact that the Cardinals didn't have a great offensive night. It's been the trend against left-handed starters, and Jacob Junis is a guy that, veteran right-hander, comes out of the bullpen and basically shuts the Cardinals down late. Now, the game was kind of out of hand by then, and you wonder how the competitiveness of those at-bats was going to go for St. Louis, but they don't get a base runner over the final 2 1/3 against Junis, striking out 3 times. So not the day you wanted to see for the Cardinals, certainly in the start of a new series, coming off of an off day, no less. And we hear so much about, 16 games in 16 days, and there's no off days. And when those kind of stretches are going on, that gets brought up, rightfully so, as being something difficult that a team might have to deal with. But when you get the off day, you'd like to think that there'd be an element of a team looking refreshed out there. And I just don't think we really got that from the Cardinals today. 9 strikeouts throughout the lineup, just not a lot going offensively. So we'll see if they're able to find a way to bounce back in Game 2 on Tuesday. And look, this is a series that you don't want to let get away. The Cardinals, if we kind of look back over the past week, were able to get the series win over Tampa Bay. And that was good to see coming back home after, they had that first game of the homestand, the loss against the Mets last Monday, about a week ago at this time. And you get the one over the Rays, you split with the Royals, only a 2-game set. So those are a little, if you split, you split. Now it's going to be going to get tough time, honestly, for the Cardinals on Tuesday. Eric Fetty, we'll see what he does in Great American Ballpark, but they're taking on Hunter Green. And this is a guy who we've always known has had really great stuff. But it seems he's finally putting it together for the Reds. 154 Ks in 136 innings, and the 2.90 ERA for the 25-year-old Hunter Green, former number 2 overall pick, has really kind of emerged and solidified this season. We always said in the offseason, the Reds are dangerous if that young rotation puts it together. And I think we saw from Andrew Abbott tonight that he's an example of somebody that's very much doing that. Hunter Green is another one. So I wouldn't put it past the Reds to potentially be able to find their way to maybe a 500 record by the end of the season. I think playoffs are probably a long shot for this team, but they do have the makings of a team with young players like Elly De La Cruz leading the way offensively, and Spencer Steer is not exactly young. What's he, 20? I'm going to guess like 27, 20. All right, 26, maybe a little younger than I thought. But I mean, they've got a few position players that are interesting. It's really the pitching though that can make the Reds dangerous. Between Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and Andrew Abbott, I mean, that's a pretty good 1-2-3 punch. And they'll just be looking for, not to get like too deep into Cincinnati Reds lore, but they'll be looking for just a couple other guys to emerge or stay healthy. That's always been a concern. I think they've had some pitching injuries that they've dealt with this year, and Graham Ashcraft in the time that he's pitched has not been particularly effective as they had hoped he would be. But they've got 3 starters that are pretty tough, and the Cardinals saw one of them tonight. They'll see another one of them on Tuesday night with Hunter Green going. Now, that is a right-hander, so we'll change the dynamic for the Cardinals. We'll see what lineup they end up going with and whether Fetty can end up making it happen. I think Wednesday evening, another 5:40 game on Wednesday, no early game. They'll take on Carson Spires. I think it's Spires. Spires. Anyhow, Cardinals have seen this guy within the last few weeks. I want to look up the game log. As I recall it, he pitched pretty well. He did, but it was back on June 29th, so a little longer ago maybe than I had initially thought, about a month and a half ago. But he went 6 innings, gave up just 1 earned run, 2 total runs on 3 hits last time he faced the Cardinals in St. Louis. So we'll see what ends up happening there. He's struggled a little bit more recently, gave up 8 runs in his last start. That's Wednesday's starter for Cincinnati, and I think with the pitching advantage of Kyle Gibson against Spires, that should be one that the Cardinals might be able to find. So there's still an opportunity to win this series, but it's going to have to happen in a bit of an uphill climb on Tuesday with Eric Fetty, who, look, I think he's going to end up being one of the Cardinal better starters. It is Spires, by the way. I had to look up the pronunciation there. But I think Fetty's going to be one of the Cardinals' better starters. Can he get the job done against Hunter Green? More aptly put, can the Cardinal offense get the job done against Hunter Green? We'll have to see on Tuesday. We'll be back with B-Schaeff Daily after that one, so make sure you subscribe. I know folks are losing a little bit of faith in the Cardinals at this point, and like I said, I understand it if that's the boat that you're in, but let your thoughts be known. Let your thoughts be heard. Comment below, and make sure to join us for future episodes of B-Schaeff Daily as the Cardinals try to figure this thing out. Appreciate you guys as always. There was no minor league baseball, obviously, with it being a Monday, so no Down on the Farm tonight. So that will do it for this edition of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.